Okay. Yeah. Good. Okay. Okay. Yeah. And decide, if it's going to work. So, yes. Cool. Right. So I guess we're starting pretty soon, yeah.
Check 1 2, check 1 2.
Tim, can you check your mic?
Check 1 2 1 2. Yeah.
Shana Tova, everyone. Good morning. I had a little bit of issue with the stream, but we fixed that, so now we're live. So sorry about that tardy beginning. I'm Rabbi Matt Berger. It's a pleasure to welcome those few who are gathered here in the sanctuary, the chosen, so to speak, for the different service honors. And I'm pleased to have on the bima once again our soloist, Allison Rosoff, down at the keyboard, Tim Berneman. Many thanks to our tech crew who's helping out with the slides and the camera work, as well as the stream. And I hope that the first day of 5782 was a day filled with meaning and joy for all of you. We're going to begin in our prayer book, Mishkan HaNefesh, Dwelling Place of the Soul. Our Shacharit service is found on page 109, an introductory reading before we sing Ma Tovu, how beautiful are your tents. I have awakened again and I give thanks. Before me the blessing of this day, a feast of choices and possibilities. And the breath within me says, great is your faithfulness. You offer me another chance. You offer me life. This day I am created to create this day.
Ma tovu ohalecha, ohalecha, Yaakov. Ma tovu ohalecha, ohalecha, Yisrael. Va'ani b'rov hastecha, avo v'techa, eshtachaveh el echad kodshecha. קודשך ויראתך יאי לי
Let's continue with a prayer for study found on page 112. Feel free to join me. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, who sanctifies our lives with mitzvot and gives us the sacred obligation of learning and living Torah. Always important to offer prayers for our bodies and for our health. Continuing on 121. You have taught us, guard yourselves well, take good care of your lives. Your word calls to us, do not harm yourself, do not weaken or exhaust yourself. In gratitude for the gift of our bodies, we pray for a year of renewed health and replenished strength. May caring for our bodies become our daily practice. May we be attentive to our need for proper food, sleep, and exercise. Let no injury come to others through our acts or failure to act. But let our mitzvah be this, to build a just society in which care is a birthright and the blessing of health the responsibility of all. Baruch atah Adonai rofei chol basar umafli la'asot. Continue on 136. Blessed are we, blessed our gathering, as we open our hearts to the voice of the shofar. Happy are we who hear its call to return, the sacred trumpet of Teshuvah. Blessed are we, held close by an ancient sound that echoes Ledor Vador, from generation to generation. Happy are we, rising to the joyful cry of a new year. Blessed are we who hear in these blasts the sound, the voice of community. Happy are we who know its embrace, its season of celebration, its quest for connection and purpose. Holy is this gift of community. Blessed the act of belonging. Shema Yisrael, hear, O Israel, the divine abounds everywhere and dwells in everything. Its faces are infinite, its source suffuses all. The many are one. My honor to call Harriet Cesaro for a brief introduction to the shofar this morning before our shofar service proper. I'll ask all of us to rise as we hear three sounds of the shofar. Tekiah. Shivarim Trua. Tekiah. Blessed is the soul-reaching sound of the shofar. It proclaims the purpose of this day. Blessed is community, source of joy, solace, and strength to every living soul. Feel free to be seated. We'll continue with the words of the half or Chatzi Kaddish found on page 141.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה אמן ביאמן דברך ירצה וימליך מלכותי בחייכון ובימכון ובחיי כל בית ישראל בגלה בזמן קריב ויאמרו אמן יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם עולמי עמיה יתברך יתברך וישתבח ויפאר וירומן ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו לעילה ולעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה ט"ו בשבחה ונחמתה דמירן בימה ויאמרו אמן.
Please rise for the Barhu, our call to worship.
Lai 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 Morachu et Adonai Amevorach Baruch Adonai Amevorach Leolam Vaed.
We'll continue on page 145, the bottom of the page, with a prayer for creation. The morning wind forever blows. The poem of creation is uninterrupted, but few are the ears that hear it. Baruch atah Adonai, Yotzer Hamaorot. Our praise to you, Adonai, creator of the cosmic lights. And on 146, may learning your Torah light up our eyes. May our hearts embrace your mitzvot. Unite us in love and reverence for you, that we may never feel ashamed of our deeds.
והערננו בתורתך ודבק לבנו במצוותיך ויחד לבבנו לאהבה ויראה את שמך ולא נבוש לעולם ועד ולא נבוש לעולם ועד והערננו בתורתך ודבק לבנו במצוותיך ויחד לבבנו לאהבה ויראה את שמך.
Continue on page 148, words of love, Ahava Rabbah. Bring us in peace from the four corners of the earth. Lead us with upright pride to the land that is ours. For you are a God of miracles and wonders. From all the peoples of the earth, you sought us out and brought us near to your great enduring truth. So with love, we acknowledge and proclaim that you are one. Baruch atah Adonai, habocher be'amo Yisrael, be'ahava.
Lai 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 Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto, Leolam Vaed.
Feel free to be seated and join us in the chanting of the Via Hafta. You shall love Adonai your God with all your heart, mind, and soul. Page 152. Via Hafta et Adonai Elohecha v'chol levavcha v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol me'odecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'eleh asher anochi mitzavcha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha b'veitecha uv'lechtecha v'derech u'shokbecha uv'kumecha u'kshartam le'ot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot bein einecha u'ktavtam al mezuzot beitecha u'visharecha leman tizkeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'yitem kedoshim le'Elohechem Ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim li'ot bachem le'Elohim Ani Adonai Elohechem. On 157, you'll find an interpretation of the translation of the Via Hafta. Love God with your mind, stay curious, open to questions, marvel at the wonder of what is. Love God with your heart, stay alive to suffering and joy, yearn for the world that could be. Love God with your strength, open your hands and give, work for the sake of what ought to be.
Mi chamocha b'helim Adonai, mi chamocha nedar b'kodesh, nor tehilot or sefele, shira chadasha, shibegugyulim l'shimcha tasafat hayam, יחד כולם הודו והמליכו ויאמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד.
And the Chatimah, the closing words of the blessing, Baruch atah Adonai Ga'al Yisrael. Blessed are you in our lives, Eternal One, who redeemed Israel. We rise now for the words of the Tefillah, which begin on page 166 and continue on even pages as we stand before God.
Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi agita hilatecha Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi agita hilatecha Oh God, open up my lips מתי תפתח ופי יגיד תהילתך. ברוך אתה מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומחייהם אמונתו לשני עפר, מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומדום מלך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה לחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי הכל.
Feel free to be seated as we continue with Unatana Tochef, the power of this day, page 175 in your prayer books. Let us embrace the day in its holiness, for this is a throne of goodness and power. When the people of Israel do God's will, they strengthen God's power on high. But when the people of Israel fail to do God's will, they weaken, if one may say it, God's great power on high. So let this day recall your power and ours. Let it remind us of our promises kept and broken, as we remind you of yours. Let this day be a throne of forgiveness, for today we are the accountants of our souls, the navigators of our hearts, seeking wholeness and new direction. and we seek you through signs of your presence in the arc of sacred history. I make this covenant not with you alone, but with those who are standing here with us this day, and with those who are not. God of ages past and future, God of this day, as you are with our mothers and fathers, be with us as well. Join me in a translation on page 176. And so a great shofar will cry Tekiah. A still small voice will be heard. Angels in a whirl of fear and trembling will say, behold the day of judgment, for they too are judged. In your eyes, even they are not blameless. All who come into the world pass before you like sheep before their shepherd. As a shepherd considers the flock when it passes beneath the staff, you count and consider every life. You set bounds, you decide destiny, you inscribe judgments.
Rosh Hashanah yikatevun, uvyum som kippur yikatemun. Rosh Hashanah yikatevun, uvyum som kippur yikatemun.
On Rosh Hashanah, we plunge like swimmers into a sea of words. On Yom Kippur, the sea rises, then crests, and we emerge, sealed by the wax, warmed by the fire of braided candle. The new year is like a trailhead, opening wide before us. The day of fasting, narrow, breathless, so quick to close. We contemplate a new year, and this we know. Some of us will live, and some of us will die. Some will die young, and some very old. Some by water, and some by fire. Some by sword, and some by beast, some by hunger and some by thirst, some by plague and some by earthquake, some by stoning and some by strangling. Some of us will feel at ease, some will be restless. Some will have peace of mind, some will have strife. Some will be tranquil, some will be tormented. Some will be raised high, some will be brought low. Some will have riches, some will be impoverished. But through return to the right path, through prayer and righteous giving, we can transcend the harshness of the decree. Uteshuva, utafila, utzedaka, mahavirin et ro, Continuing on 182, we who are mortal, our origin is dust, and so is our end. We wear out our lives to get our bread, like broken vessels, like withered glass, like a flower that must fade, a shadow moving on, a cloud passing by, mere dust on the wind, a dream that flies away. Please rise for the Kedusha, Holiness, page 184.
Nikadesh, ששמך בעולם, נקדש ששמך בעולם, כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מורום. ככתוב ביד נביאך, וכרזל זה ויאמר, קדוש, קדוש, קדוש אדוני צבאות, מלוא כל הארץ כבודו. אדיר, אדירנו, אדיר, אדירנו. אדוני, אדוני, אדוננו, מדיר, מדיר שמך בכל הארץ. ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו. אחד הוא אלוהינו, הוא אבינו, הוא מלכנו, הוא מושיענו, והוא ישמיענו, והוא ישמיענו ברחמיו וכל חי. אני אדוני אלוהיכם. ימלוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהי
free to be seated. We'll continue with a prayer by a rabbi named Rabbah on page 199. It's an introduction to the shofar service. According to Rabbah, the Holy One said on Rosh Hashanah, recite before me words of malchuyot, sovereignty, zichronot, remembrance, and shofarot, sovereignty, so that you may acknowledge me as ruler over you, remembrance, so that remembrances of you may rise up favorably before me. And how shall all this be accomplished? Through the sounds of the shofar. Please rise for the Great Aleinu found on page 202 as the ark is opened.
Aleinu l'shameach. La'adon hakol l'tigedula le'yotzev reishit shelo asanu kegoye haratzot ve'lo simanu kamishbechot hadama shelo samkelkeinu kahem v'goraleinu kechol hamonam va'anaknu korim u'mishtachavim u'modim לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא.
We'll continue with a meditation for the sounding of the shofar on page 205. Dwell on each sound of the shofar. Tekiyah, one whole note. Shvarim truah, 3 broken notes, 9 staccato notes. Tekiyah, one whole note. My return to the right path has the power to make me whole again. Tekiyah, once I was whole. Shvarim truah, in the wear and tear of living, I became broken and shattered. Tekiyah, my teshuvah has the power to make me whole again. I invite Harriet Zazaro to be our Baalat Koreh, sounding the shofar. And the blessings for the sounding of the shofar are found on page 206. I'll invite us to rise at this time. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kedishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lishmoa kol shofar. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Shehechianu v'kiyamanu v'higianu lazman hazeh. Tekiah. Shivarim Trua. Tekiah. Tekiah. Shivarim. Tekiah. Tekiah. Trua. Tekiah. Yeshikoach, well done.
Wonderful.
Feel free to be seated. Hayom harat olam, today the world is born anew. This day the whole of creation stands before you to be judged. As we are your children, love us in the way of mothers and fathers. As we are yours in service, guide us by the light of your justice, grace, and holiness.
Reshet Svatenu Yevna Lefanecha Eram Vinisa Ram Vinisa Mevin Uma'azin Ma'abit U'makshiv Lekol Tekiyatenu Utkaber Berachamim Uvratzon Seder Machirotenu.
Let the wishes of our lips, our heart's desire, be pleasing before you, God Most High. You are knowing and attentive, watchful and aware when we call out Tekiah. Lovingly, favorably receive our prayers of Malchuyot, sovereignty. Continuing on page 213, poem by Patricia Winters, giver of life and all good gifts. Grant us also wisdom to use only what we need, courage to trust your bounty, imagination to preserve our resources, determination to deny frivolous success, and inspiration to sustain through temptation. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha, u'cha na'el lehodot. Blessed are you, God, whose goodness deserves thanks and praise. Continue with the words of the threefold benediction, Birkat Kohanim.
Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yikudneka Yisa Adonai panav elecha ve'yasem lecha shalom.
May you know God's blessings of shelter and care. May it be so. May you receive the light of God's kindness and grace. May it be so. May you see God's favor and goodness, and may you partake of God's peace. May it be so. Sim Shalom, our prayer of peace, is found on 216.
Sim shalom, sim shalom, sim shalom, tova uvracha, chen
Let the pursuit of peace and justice be our highest good. May all people make peace their responsibility. Let Torah be a light that guides our lives toward empathy and understanding, toward generosity of heart. Let peace be our passion, chief among our prayers, every season of the year, every hour of the day. Baruch atah Adonai, Osei HaShalom, you are the Blessed One, eternal source of shalom. Take these moments for our own silent prayer.
Ritzei Adonai Eloheinu Me'amecha Yisrael Utefilatan Me'ahava Tamid avodat Yisrael Yisrael Amecha V'techezena eineinu v'shuvecha l'tzion b'rachamim Baruch atah Adonai Hamachazir Shechinato
Continue on page 224, the words of Avinu Malkeinu, Almighty and Merciful. Please rise as we open the ark. Avinu Malkeinu, we stand in awe, we draw close in love. Avinu Malkeinu, the power that passes through us and pervades all things. Avinu Malkeinu, the divine that is present within and among us. Avinu Malkeinu, Shema Kolenu, we speak this sacred truth aloud. Avinu Malkeinu, Chatanu Lifanecha, we stand as one accountable for our sins. Avinu Malkeinu, Chamol Aleinu ve'al Olaleinu v'tapenu. We yearn for true compassion, for our children most of all. Avinu Malkeinu, Kale Dever v'cherev v'ra'av me'aleinu. May we resist the ravages of illness, fear, and despair. Avinu Malkeinu, Kale Kol Tsaru Masin me'aleinu. Let us summon courage to withstand our enemies. Avinu Malkeinu, Kodvenu b'sefer Chaim Tovim. Let the goodness of this gift of life be engraved upon our hearts. Avinu Malkeinu, Chadesh Aleinu Shana Tova. May we taste anew the sweetness of each day. Avinu Malkeinu Malei Yadenu Mibirchotecha. Let us wake up to the blessings already in our grasp. Avinu Malkeinu Chonenu Vanenu Ki Ein Banu Ma'asim Asei Manu Tzedakah V'Chesed V'Hoshienu. However small our deeds, let us see their power to heal. May we save lives through compassion, generosity, and justice.
Avinu Malkeinu, Chonenu Vanenu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chonenu Vanenu, Ki Ein Banu Ma'asim, Asei Manu, Tzedakah V'Chesed, Asei Manu, Tzedakah
Standing for our Torah service, Seder Kriyat Torah, which begins on page 228 with the reading of God's 13 attributes. Adonai Adonai El Rachum V'Chanun Erech Apayim V'Rav Chesed V'Emet Notzer Chesed La'alafim Nosei Avon V'Fesha V'Chata'a V'Nakeh. Adonai Adonai, God compassionate, gracious, endlessly patient, loving, and true, showing mercy to the 1,000th generation, forgiving evil, defiance, and wrongdoing, granting pardon.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh v'nora Shemo. Lecha Adonai hagidula v'hagevura v'hativeret v'hanitzach v'hahod Kicho b'shamayim u'va'aretz Kicho b'shamayim u'va'aretz Lecha Adonai hamamlacha v'mitnaseh lechol Rosh Al Shosha Devarim, Al Shosha Devarim, Al Shelosha Shelosha Devarim, Ha'olam Ha'olam Omed. Al Shosha Devarim, Al Shosha Devarim, Al Shelosha Shelosha Devarim, Ha'olam Ha'olam Omed. Al HaTorah ve'al ha'avodah ve'al gemilut chasadim. Al HaTorah ve'al ha'avodah ve'al gemilut chasadim.
Feel free to be seated. Thank you very much to Susan and David Heron for helping to undress the Torah. And hopefully you enjoyed the pictures of our past presidents holding the Torah. We thank them for all their years of guiding and leading this congregation. This is the toughest Torah lift of the year. I'll just be honest with you, because it's all on one side. If it's 100% on one side or 100% on the other side, like we are today in the opening words of Genesis, and we've got a great Magbia who will be doing that later on. It's primed for lefties at this point of the year, and in a couple weeks when we read the last verses of the book of Deuteronomy, that's primed for righties. So this is very good for lefties today. I'm going to be reading the first 2 days of generations. We did have somebody else, but unfortunately they fell ill, so they weren't able to be here, and we wish her a full and complete recovery. For the honor of the Aliyah, it's my pleasure to call to the front of the Bima at this time our education director for many decades, Elaine Wolstein. Tamod Tivka Bat Yaakov La Aliyah La Torah. You'll find the blessings before and after the Torah reading on page 230.
Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMavorach. Baruch Adonai HaMavorach Leolam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Ha'amim V'natan Lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Notain HaTorah.
Amen. Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. Ve'aretz hayta tohu vavohu. Ve'choshech al panei tehom. Ve'ruach Elohim merachefet al panei hamayim. Vayomer Elohim yior vayior. Vayar Elohim et ha'or ki tov. Vayavdeh Elohim bein ha'or ubein ha'choshech. Vayikra Elohim la'yom yom v'la'choshech hara layla. Vayerev vayivoker yom echad. Vayomer Elohim yehi rakia betoch hamayim. Vihi mavdil bein mayim lamayim. Vayas Elohim et harakia. V'yavdel bein hamayim asher mitachat larakia. Uvein hamayim asher me'al larakia. Vayhi kein. Vayikra Elohim larakia shamayim. Vayerev vayivoker yom sheni. That's it. You're up.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. With the Torah still before us, we'll have the opportunity. First, Yashikoah to you, Elaine. You're good for now, and we'll bring you back up for the Haftorah.
Okay, I'll come back.
I mean, you can stay there the whole time, but it's going to be a little while. That's great. You'll find the words of Healing Mishaberach on page 245 or on the screen before you as we think of individuals who are battling COVID. We hope and pray for their recovery, for all those recovering from the winds and floods of Hurricane Ida, as well as the following individuals for health and well-being. As we think of Yonatan Ruvain Ben Rivka, Charlie Burke, Marcy Bunn, Lisa Cargile, Eddie Deerfield, Edie Eckber, Evelyn Edelman, Heather Felser, Harry Fleisch, Maxine Frank, Denise Freifeld, Mitchell Freifeld, Maria Huda Gonzalez, Jerry Gottlieb, Leah Gottlieb, Doris Harding, Priscilla Harris, Paula Hickey, Arthur Maller, Ray Mancari, Arnold Miller, William Miller, Paula Rosoff, Stephanie Ross, Arlene Charlotte, Scott Spector, Jeff Stark, and Mark Stouffer. Are there any other names to add for healing at this time?
My father, George Stark.
Misheberach Avotenu Mikor habracha Limotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Misheberach imotenu mikor habracha leavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen.
Pleasure once again to invite Susan and David Heron forward. They're going to be reading an adaptation of the translation of the opening words of Genesis.
When God was creating the heavens and the earth, everything was dark and disorganized, and there was an empty, whistling, gurgling sound in the darkness. So God said, "Let there be light," and light shone, and the darkness wasn't so scary. That was the first day.
The second day, God made the atmosphere and created the water cycle. There was water everywhere as far as the eye could see.
The third day, God collected the water into different places. It was water in rivers, lakes, streams, and oceans. And so the land appeared and grew green.
The fourth day, God took all the light that had been created on the first day and created the universe. galaxies, black holes, stars, solar systems, asteroids, and moons.
The fifth day, God put animals in the water and the sky, cardinals and crocodiles, robins and coral reefs, ducks and dolphins.
The sixth day, God put animals on the land, bugs and snakes, but also lambs and puppies. After making all this, God made a creature that resembled God, and that was us.
On the seventh day, God stopped creating, and looking around, God said, "This is good."
Thank you so much. And before you sit down, actually, I'm going to call you back up. Good thing I got you right before you sat down, because you're going to help dress the Torah. Jonathan Mines, I'm going to call forward. He is going to be our Magbia, lifting the Torah scroll so we can all see. Please rise as the scroll is lifted.
וזאת התורה ששם משה לפני בני ישראל על פי אדוני ביד משה. יאי לי 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 יא la 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 יא la 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 la. וזאת התורה אשר שם משה לפני בני ישראל על פי אדוני ביד משה. יאי לי 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 יא la 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 יא la 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 יא la 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 la.
Now it's my pleasure to call upon Harriet Cesaro. She's going to be reading an introduction to the Haftarah selection. Following that, Jonathan Mines will be leading the Haftarah blessings, and Elaine Wolstein once again will be chanting from the selection from Jeremiah.
The traditional Haftarah for the second day of Rosh Hashanah focuses on teshuvah in many dimensions: penitence and remorse, physical and spiritual return. Our sages chose words of the prophet Jeremiah, who lived toward the end of the 7th century BCE, a period of intense political turmoil. Caught between the empires of Egypt and Babylonia, the people of the southern kingdom of Judah were painfully aware of the destruction of the northern kingdom of Israel by Assyria a century before, when 10 Israelite tribes were conquered and dispersed. Addressing a people fearing for their future, Jeremiah begins by assuring them of God's enduring concern for them. Thus said the Eternal, with an everlasting love I have loved you. Ahavat olam ahavtich. The prophet offers a joyful vision of the return of the northern exiles and a reunited Jewish nation in which Judah and Israel, symbolized by the figures of Jacob and Ephraim, will celebrate together at the summit of Zion, Jerusalem. In this imagined future, the rupture between northern and southern kingdoms will be healed, and a repentant Ephraim will return to God. In a poignant image, Rachel, matriarch of the Jewish nation, weeps at the loss of her exiled children, but she receives this comforting reassurance. There is hope for your future, declares the Eternal. Your children shall return to their land. The prophet ends by emphasizing that God's love and forgiveness are infinite. Powerful words of affirmation for all who seek to do teshuvah. Jeremiah's vision of national reconciliation evokes our own hopes for personal and communal healing.
Thank you, Harriet. And Jonathan will be leading the blessing before the Haftarah found on 247. And Elaine, if you'd like to come up.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'nviim tovim b'rotza b'divreihem hane'emarim be'emet. Baruch atah Adonai habocher b'torah u'Moshe avdo u'Yisrael amo u'b'nviei ha'emet v'tzedek.
Amen. Yashikoch. And the selection from Jeremiah is found on 255 for those with prayer books or on the screen.
You can't read upside down, can you? No, this is not it. Ko amar Adonai matzachein bamidbar am seride charev haloch lahagio Yisrael merachok Adonai nira li v'ahavat olam ahavtich al kein mishachtich chased od evnech v'nivneit betulat Yisrael od tadit tupayich v'yatzat b'mechol mesachakim od tit'ich ramim b'harei Shomron natu notim v'chilelu ki yesh yom karu notzerim bahar Ephraim kumu v'na'alet Sion el Adonai Eloheinu ki cho amar Adonai Ranu li'Yaakov simacha v'tzahalu b'rosh hagayim hashmihu halalu v'yimru hosha Adonai et amacha et she'erit Yisrael hineni Meviotam me'eretz Safon v'kibatzim mi'arketei haaretz ba'miver ufiseach hara v'yoledet yachdav kahal gadol yashuvu heinam Bivchi yavo uvtachanunim ovilem olichem el nachale mayim b'derech
Yasha lo yakashlu ba ki hayiti le Yisrael la'av ve'Ephraim bechorihu shimu davar Adonai goyim v'hagidu va'ichim mimerchak ve'emru Mizadeh Yisrael Yekaptenu Ushmaro Kuroe Edro.
Yashakah, beautiful reading from the Haftarah from Yirmiyahu. And Jonathan will lead the closing blessing, page 259, or on the screen before you.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu, melech haolam, tzur kol ha'olamim, tzaddik b'kol hadorot, ha'el ha'ne'eman, v'ha'omer v'oseh, u'medaber u'mekayem, shechol dorarav emet v'tzedek, al ha'torah, v'al ha'avodah, v'al ha'ninvi'im, v'al yom zikaron hazeh, shenatata lanu, Adonai Eloheinu, Levarchod u'levtfaret al ha'kol Adonai Eloheinu anaknu modim lach u'marvarchim otach yitbarach shimcha b'fi kol chai tamid li'olam va'ed v'yivrach ama v'kayam la'ad Baruch atah Adonai melech kol ha'aretz mekadesh Yisrael v'yom hazikaron.
Amen. Yashakah. Well done, Jonathan. Our shofar service, the second part of it, continues with Zichronot, remembrance, on page 268. My honor once again to call upon our Baalat Koreh, Harriet Cesaro, to lead us. Tekiah, Shivarim Trua, Tekiah, Tekiah, Shivarim, Tekiah, Tekiah, Trua, Tekiah. Yashakah, well done once again. Feel free. We'll continue on page 269. Today the world is born anew. This day the whole of creation stands before you to be judged. As we are your children, love us in the way of mothers and fathers. As we are yours in service, guide us by the light of your justice, grace, and holiness.
Reshet sifatenu erav la lefanecha eram v'nisa ram v'nisa mevin u'ma'azin ma'abeit u'makshiv lekol tekiyatenu u'tkol
the wishes of our lips, our heart's desire, be pleasing before you, God Most High. You are knowing and attentive, watchful and aware when we call out Tekiah. Lovingly, favorably receive our prayers of Zichronot. Now I'll have the opportunity for an extended time of reflection. Feel free to share the prayer of your hearts, and if you'd like, we have about 10 slides, prayers for our congregation, for our country, and for the state of Israel. I'll invite all of us to rise as we return the Torah to the Ark. You'll find the words of Eitz Chaim. Torah is a tree of life on page 277. A precious teaching I have given you, my Torah, do not forsake it. A tree of life to those who hold it fast. All who embrace it know happiness. Its ways are ways of pleasantness, and all its paths are peace. Take us back, Adonai, let us come back to you. Renew in our time the days of old.
It's Shalom, Ashirenu
The final section of our shofar service, called Shofarot, the Call, is found on page 284. I'll invite all of us to rise for hearing these last blasts of the shofar. Baruch atah Adonai, shomea kol trua amo Yisrael barachamim. Blessed are you in our lives, Adonai. You hear with love the shofar, true voice of your people Israel. Tekiah, shivarim trua, tekiah, tekiah, shivarim, tekiah, tekiah, trua, tekiah gedolah, Yasher koach. Beautiful. Feel free to be seated. Wonderful sounding of the shofar for the second day of Rosh Hashanah. Hayom harat olam. Today the world is born anew. This day the whole of creation stands before you to be judged. As we are your children, love us in the way of mothers and fathers. As we are yours in service, guide us by the light of your justice, grace, and holiness.
Reshet sifatenu ye'erav lefanecha eram v'nisa ravenisa mevin uma'azin ma'abeit u'makshiv lekol tekiyatenu utkabel berachamim uvratzon seder shofronotenu.
Let the wishes of our lips, our heart's desire, be pleasing before you, God Most High. You are knowing and attentive, watchful and aware when we call out Tekiah. Lovingly, favorably receive our prayers of shofarot. Once upon a time, certain rabbis of distinction were given monikers. Some were named after their most famous commentary. For example, Rabbi Yehuda Aryeh Leib was called Sfat Emet, the title of his most famous work, The Language of Truth. Other rabbis were identified with an acronym of their names. In this way, Rabbi Meir Leib ben Yechiel Michael, which is quite a mouthful, was called the Malbim. The Malbim was a well-known biblical commentator who lived in the 19th century Romania. However, he would travel from time to time to visit other cities. Once, while he was staying in Berlin, he attended a lecture by a well-known preacher. It was a long and winded talk, essentially devoid of any substance or insight. The Malbim wasn't amused. In fact, he was very annoyed. Feeling that his valuable time was wasted, the Malbim made the following comment. The book of Kohelet, Ecclesiastes, gives us a list of 20 contrasts, such as a time to love and a time to hate, or a time to weep and a time to laugh. In every contrast, there's a middle ground. After all, one can be in a state where one neither loves nor hates, or when one is neither weeping nor laughing. There's one contrast in Ecclesiastes, though, that's always puzzled me. It's the one that says there's a time to remain silent and a time to speak. Up until now, I couldn't understand where the middle ground between the two could be. You either speak or you don't speak. But after hearing this speaker, I see that it's possible for somebody not to stay silent and still say nothing. Most of us, at some point or another, have been introduced to the book of Ecclesiastes. For some, it might have been through the Byrds or Pete Seeger's musical setting of its 3rd chapter. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time for every purpose under heaven. This is the context where we find the teaching about a time to keep silent and a time to speak. Others may be familiar with these verses because they're frequently read at a funeral. There's something about its wisdom, its tone, the acceptance of reality that resonates with a lot of people. In a way, some believe it mirrors the philosophy of the sage Hillel, who said simply, if not now, when? No matter how we were introduced to it, the book of Ecclesiastes contains really important life lessons about the world we live in. Lessons that are still relevant now, about 2,500 years after it was first written. Because Ecclesiastes teaches us how to live well in the face of the inevitable ups and downs of life. In Hebrew, the name of the book is Kohelet, because its author gathered or assembled this vast treasury of knowledge. Some believe that King Solomon wrote the book. Others, of course, disagree. In any event, it's one of the most honest books in the Bible because, like the book of Job that I spoke about yesterday, it admits that the world isn't always fair. It's realistic, and it also acknowledges that bad things happen to good people. For instance, it includes the following teaching: neither power, nor money, nor prestige, nor even wisdom will save us at the end. At the same time, Ecclesiastes asks us to enjoy life by having good food, drinking in moderation, finding work that's meaningful, and making friends. Now that I've shared just a bit of background about Ecclesiastes, let's get back to one of its greatest teachings. There is a time to keep silent and a time to speak. All of us know at least one person who talks a mile a minute, who fills every pause in the conversation with words. Some of these words are valuable, while others perhaps less so. There are those who speak with measured words, following the advice of the statesman Benjamin Disraeli, who said, "It's better to remain silent and have people say, 'I wonder what this person's thinking,' than to speak up and have people say, 'I wonder why this person spoke at all.'" As a religious tradition, Judaism has a lot to say about words. No surprise there. The Torah has about 80,000 of them, and the Talmud, the great collection of law and lore, has about 2.5 million words. During the high holidays, there's a heightened sensitivity to how we use our words, how we choose them. Just think of all the communal prayers that describe the ways we can miss the mark with our speech. There are at least 36 warnings about gossip, empty confessions, lying, using God's name in vain. Without a doubt, the use of words is front and center during this season. Now, the dilemma that Ecclesiastes talks about isn't new. It's been examined for at least a couple thousand years. The sages of the Talmud, some of that 2.5 million words, include a vivid description about the unruliness of the tongue. So it puts forth an idea that God actually sets physically the limits of our speech. The Holy One is speaking to the tongue. All of the limbs stand tall, but you alone are horizontal. All the others are outside the body, while you're on the inside. More than that, I've surrounded the tongue with two walls, one made of bone, the other made of flesh. The message is that our ability to speak comes with checks and balances. When we speak wisely and with purpose, our words are valuable. And when we don't, the value of our words is diminished. It reminds me of a lesson I learned back in rabbinical school. There was this class called homiletics. It's about a year long, and it teaches the art of writing and delivering sermons. How to breathe through your diaphragm, how to enunciate your words, how to convey information in an appealing way. What I remember most is the professor saying this: when you give a sermon, if you haven't struck oil in 20 minutes, stop boring. It was good advice then, and I still follow it today. So one thing I remember. Ecclesiastes first teaches us when to keep silent. There's a wide range of teachings at this end of the spectrum. An early Jewish text says, a word for a coin and silence for two. The thinking is that we're only able to listen and understand when we're not talking ourselves. The sages also call silence a fence to wisdom. In traditional Jewish services, the conservative and Orthodox movements, the tefillah, or set of standing prayers, is recited not once but twice, first as a community led by the chazan or cantor, and then once again in silence. This custom is based on Hannah's prayer when she longed for a child. In this biblical story, her lips moved, but no one could hear what she was saying. A modern take on silence was offered by the late Rabbi Sir Jonathan Sacks. He said that the type of silence that counts in Judaism is a listening silence. As an example, he pointed out that the usual translation of the Hebrew word Shema in the prayer doesn't really cover all the bases. It's usually rendered as hearing or listening, but the word Shema also means understanding, paying attention, internalizing, and also acting. In other words, while Judaism is a religion of listening, just as importantly, it's an active religion of speaking and doing. Just a few generations ago, parents as well as teachers encouraged kids to keep silent, telling them it's better to be seen than heard. You can imagine this led a lot of kids to think twice before they open their mouths. And while this might have been tidy from a behavioral perspective, it probably wasn't the best message overall. When it comes to our relationships, many times what people need most is just to be listened to, without hearing any suggestions about how they could improve the situation. Stereotypically, this is a guy thing to do, like we learned about in that book, Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus. But as we all know, there are a multitude of exceptions to the rule. When we listen well, we're offering a wonderful gift, and people usually let us know if they want a solution to their problem. At the same time, we know that silence isn't always golden. The book of Ecclesiastes also encourages us to speak out with wisdom and understanding. One of the pressing issues that faces our country is the persistent way that people use words to instill fear. Racists use hateful language to promote their prejudice. Xenophobes typecast ethnic groups in negative ways. And certainly, Jews are all too familiar with anti-Semitism being part of our landscape. Both here in America and throughout the world, there has been a huge resurgence of anti-Semitic rhetoric and a record number of anti-Semitic events. Even students at colleges with very significant Jewish populations are no longer immune to this type of hatred. So much so, it's necessary to sound the shofar as an alarm or a wake-up call, because as we know, the line between hate speech and violence can be blurred. When it comes to standing up against anti-Semitism in all its forms, the Anti-Defamation League is our key ally that fights hate for good. Founded in 1913, its mission is to protect the Jewish people, yes, but it also strives to secure fair treatment for everyone, regardless of their background or their religion. The ADL works with adults and students alike. One of their signature initiatives, No Place for Hate, is found in many K-12 schools throughout Florida and the U.S. Starting with our youngest learners, No Place for Hate creates a positive climate among teachers and students, uniting communities against bullying and hatred. It's a really impressive program. Closer to home, I've been heartened over the past year knowing that many of you feel the same way. Like when our Social Action Committee shares important information about the Florida legislative session each winter on a number of state and community issues, ranging from education to voting rights to social justice. More recently, we've established a working group of 12 individuals from our congregation and St. James AME, or African Methodist Episcopal Church in Clearwater. We're calling it United for Equity. Thus far, we've met on Zoom, and we had a great dinner in person right by Upper Tampa Bay. We listened to each other, we broke bread together, we shared our stories. It was so eye-opening to learn how racism affects people individually, both historically when they were younger and also in the present day. Together, we're looking to find a common cause, an initiative that we can work on together for the group of the community. Whenever we choose to speak up and advocate for others, we're doing the sacred work of tikkun, the Jewish imperative to repair the world one good action at a time. I've spoken to many of you about personal and community issues that are close to your heart. I urge you to continue to speak with passion against the issues that are important to you, whether it's fighting against injustice, combating hate speech, caring for our environment, or protecting animal life. Your passion, your stories, and your voice truly make a difference. In our opening story, the Malbim, our rabbi, was being sarcastic when he said that speaking while still saying nothing fell somewhere in between speech and silence. But if we had to split the middle, I think it's fair to say that all of us could benefit from taking time to cultivate mindful speech. For some of us, this may mean thinking twice before typing something narrow-minded online. For others, it may mean using a more moderate tone when we're around somebody who has extreme opinions. Recently, I learned about another way we can gauge the mindfulness of our speech by asking ourselves the following 3 questions. Is it true? Is it kind? And is it important? There's a story I'd like to share that incorporates all 3. It's found in Rabbi Joseph Telushkin's book, Words That Hurt and Words That Heal. Here we learn about a guy named Leopold Pfefferberg. He was one of the 1,100 Jews that Oskar Schindler saved during the Holocaust. In 1947, just before Leopold and his wife emigrated to America from Germany, he promised Schindler that he would make his name great throughout the world, but it would take decades for that to happen. After moving to LA in 1950, Leopold opened a leather goods shop. Because of its location, Many of its clients were in the film business. One day, the spouse of a major movie producer walked in with 2 handbags that needed fixing. Leopold said, "I'll fix these 2 handbags for free if you talk to your husband about a great story." She agreed. The husband came in, he listened to the story, but the studio wouldn't pursue it. For many decades, Leopold told everyone he met about Oskar Schindler, but he couldn't move the needle. It wasn't until 1980 that he found a willing audience. An Australian novelist, Thomas Keneally, came into his store, listened to Leopold's story, and decided to write a book about it. 2 years later, Schindler's List was published to worldwide acclaim. 12 years later, many of us watched Steven Spielberg's film, Schindler's List, which won an Academy Award. At long last, decades later, Leopold finally fulfilled his promise. It's rare for a single expression of kindness or truth-telling leads to great things. But as our sages teach us, someone who learns a single chapter, a single law, a single verse, a single expression, even a single letter, should treat their companion with gratitude, because our words and our actions make that much of a difference. Whoever wrote Ecclesiastes was a wise and seasoned teacher, someone who shared a pretty good life plan for doing well in the world, that we should eat, we should drink wisely, we should find meaningful work, and we should love. Life lessons that have stood the test of time. As we experience the varied seasons of our lives, may we come to understand, each of us in our own way, the importance of knowing when to keep silent and when to speak. And while we might not find the middle ground that the Malbim was talking about, we can always ask ourselves these 3 questions. Are the words that I'm about to share true, kind, and important? Shana Tova. We're going to continue with Aleinu, the adoration. Please rise as we open the Ark. You'll find these words on page 286 of your prayer book.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמענו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגור עלינו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו
Feel free to be seated. We'll continue with a reading before the Mourner's Kaddish on page 291. There are stars up above so far away we only see their light long, long after the star itself is gone. So it is with people that we loved. Their memories keep shining ever brightly, though their time with us is done. But the stars that light up the darkest night, these are the lights that guide us. As we live our days, these are the ways we remember. You'll find the words of Mourner's Kaddish, words of praise on 292. As we think of families in the period of Shloshim, the first 30 days, mourning a loved one. As we remember Paul Joseph Landis, brother of Sally Laufer, Bob Shear, our first temple president, Myrna Klein, mother of Lonnie Klein, Shirley Abelson, mother of David Abelson, Bella Uziel, mother of Albert Uziel, Pablo Carreño, cousin of Belinda Konigsberg, and we note the very recent passing of Toby Golger, mother of Elisa Katzeff. At this time, we mark the yahrzeit anniversary of passing of loved ones as we remember the following individuals with love and affection: Alan Allman, Molly Borger, Louis Dorfman, Abe Estulin, Mildred Friedman, Arlene Gladstone, Sidney Golden, Edwin Goldsmith, Jerome Granoff, Robert Graves, Daisy Kornfeld, Miriam Levine, Mike Madigan, Leonard Miller, Mildred Miller, Seymour Mines, Andrew Molish, Max Morrison, Mac Nord, Sidney Paykoff, Sarah Perlman, George Polanski, Ethel Reed, Sidney Rosenthal, Sam Siegel, William Steckler, Paul Tudelman, Joe Weingarten, Rhoda Wexler, and Leonard Wolstein. Are there any other names to add for yahrzeit?
Larry Faber.
We say Zichronam, oh, please. Thank you. We say Zichronam Livracha, may the memories of these good people continue to be a blessing in our lives as we rise together to offer the words of Kaddish praise. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, v'yalmad divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayei kol Beit Yisrael, b'agalav v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mibarach v'yalam ulamei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shemei d'kedusha b'rihu la'ela u'ela mikol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran v'yoma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama Rabbah min Shemaya v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Osei shalom b'mromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the one who causes peace in the heavens cause peace to descend on us, Israel, and the world, as we say, amen.
V'miru, 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 amen. V'miru, 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 amen.
Feel free to be seated. Just a few brief announcements, and following that, I'll invite Harriet Cesaro up to sound our final sound of the shofar as our liturgy continues on page 300. Firstly, thank you so much to our musical team of Allison and Tim, to our wonderful tech crew out in the back. Once again, I apologize for being about 6 minutes late. Try to be tidy about that, but some problems arose. This Friday, we'll have Shabbat services. You're welcome to come in person, up to 54 individuals. You don't need to reserve or do anything like that. This Sunday, we're having the reverse Tashlich beach cleanup program. You can sign up with the Temple Ahavat Shalom team at repairthesea.org. We're going to go meet here at 9:30 in the parking lot and then go over to Honeymoon Island. We don't have to pay for getting in, but we still will have to wait in on the line if there is one to get in. You'll get emails about the streams for Yom Kippur services probably early next week or late this week. We'll continue on page 300. I'm going to put my mask on so I can get the Kiddush cup.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen.
voices rise in song together as our joyful prayer is said. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. And let's all rise for our closing benediction and hearing the sound of the shofar. Yehi ratzon milfanecha, Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, shetchadesh aleinu shana tova u'mituka. God of our ancestors, eternal God of all generations, may your presence in our lives this new year renew our spirits and renew our strength. May it be a good year. May it be a sweet year, 5782. Tekiah Gedolah. Yasher Koach. Thank you so much.
Lishana tova tikatevu, Lishana tova tikatevu, tikatevu, tikatevu.
Shana Tova, everyone. Take care.